Welcome back to Mode Bespoke. I'm Atenas. For today's tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to make this Tunisian crochet scarf. Now this is an intermediate project and you need to be very comfortable working with a Tunisian knit stitch, but the pattern itself is not very complicated, so if you're a beginner and you'd still like to give it a shot, go ahead and try it out. Alright, so let's get started. So here's a look at the scarf we're going to be crocheting today. Now, like I mentioned in the materials list, you are going to need 2 different hooks. So here's a look at my Tunisian crochet hook. Now this is a corded hook. It is a 5mm hook. And I also need a regular hook. This one's also a 5mm hook. Try to get 2 hooks that are about the same size. So even if you're off by 0.5 millimeters or a whole millimeter, as long as they're close enough together, you'll be fine. Now for the yarn, I'm using Cotton to the Core by KnitPal, and this is the same company that makes the Tunisian hooks that I use here on the channel, so it's these bamboo ones. Now KnitPal sent me this yarn to try it out. This is the part of their new line of yarns, and this is the cotton DK, the DK weight yarn. You can find this on Amazon. I'm going to put a link in the description box below. I'll tell you more about this yarn as I crochet the project, and then I'll also wash the scarf and show you what it looks like after you have washed this yarn and tell you a little bit more about the texture. So far, the texture for this yarn is it's nice and firm. It's a cotton yarn, so it's cotton and acrylic, so it is very soft. It is still a little bit stiff to the touch, but I'm sure that like most yarns, this is going to soften up after you wash it. Alright, so let's begin with our pattern. This is worked in multiples of 9. So each of these braids, so I've got 4 braids right here, each braid is 1 multiple of 9. So if you want to make this scarf wider or shorter, not shorter, narrower, there we go. So if you want it wider, you want it narrower, just remember multiples of 9 for each braid. The PDF version of this pattern is going to be written for 4 multiples of 9 so that you can make the 4 braids like you see here. So let's begin here with the pattern. I'm just going to make 2 multiples just to show you how to attach them. But we're going to begin with a slip knot. Now I'm not going to show you how to make a slip knot as this is an intermediate pattern. I'm also not going to show you how to do the chain. If you don't know how to do either of those, this pattern may be a little too advanced for you. Alright, I'm going to begin with a chain of 18. I'm only going to do 2 multiples of 9 just to show you how to work this pattern. Now if you're going to make the scarf as written in the PDF pattern, you're going to need 4 multiples of 9, so a chain of 36 stitches. Once you've got your chain, you're going to begin a foundation row. And this is a standard foundation row, so you are going to skip the first stitch of the chain and insert your hook into the second stitch. So you're just going to insert your hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop. So you're going to cast on 1 loop for every stitch of the chain. You should end up with the same number of loops on your hook as the number of stitches you chained. Once you have cast on your foundation row, you're going to work a return pass, and this is a standard return pass, so you're going to yarn over and pull through 1. Now for the rest of the loops on your hook, you're going to yarn over and pull through 2. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, until you are left with just 1 loop on your hook. Once you've completed your return pass, your foundation row should look like this. Now, like I told you at the beginning of the video, this is worked in multiples of 9, meaning that each of these braids is made up of 9 stitches each. The pattern itself is just a 6-row repeat, so you have the front of the braid and then the back part of the braid. And for this next row, you are going to need your second hook. Now, beginning with our second vertical stitch, and we begin on the second one because you already have that first stitch. So the first braid is made up of the 9 stitches. We already have the first of the 9 stitches on our hook. So you're going to begin on the second vertical stitch of the row, and you're going to cast on a knit stitch. So remember that for the knit stitch, you insert your hook between the legs that make up the stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop, casting on 1. We're going to do the same in the next stitch so that you have a total of 3 loops on your hook. Now, you're going to need that regular crochet hook, and we're going to cast on 3 knit stitches onto that regular crochet hook. So go to the next available vertical stitch. Now this may be a little bit hard to show on camera because I have to kind of balance everything, so bear with me here. But we're going to begin on that next vertical stitch. So we're going to insert our hook into the stitch and knit stitch 1. And then we're going to repeat this in the next 2 stitches so that we end up with a total of 3 loops on our hook. Now, while you are doing the braids, remember to loosen up the tension of these stitches. These are the stitches that have to cross over across the next set of 3 stitches, so you want a loose tension so that your work doesn't curl up too much. So Once you've got your 3 stitches, just loosen up the loops and then you're going to drop your hook. So leave it hanging here or drop it or use whatever you need just to separate those stitches. And then you're going to knit stitch in the next 3 stitches. So here's the first. So we cast on 1 and then 2 and then 3. So you have your total of 9 stitches and your work should look like this. So you have your first set of 3, your second set of 3, and your last set of 3. Once your work looks like this, you are going to pull the stitches off of the regular hook and cast them onto your Tunisian hook. So normally I just slide my hook over, so you're going to twist it and slide it so that the end of the regular hook meets up with the tip of the Tunisian hook, and you just slide your stitches over. That way you don't have to pull them off or anything that you could potentially lose your stitches. You just slip them right off your regular hook, and there you go. You have your first multiple of 9 already cast onto your Tunisian hook, and you're set to begin the next one. So you're going to repeat the same steps for your next multiple, but you will have to cast on the first 3 stitches. So unlike the first 2 stitches that we had at the beginning of the row, so here, remember, we already had this loop on our hook, so we only cast on 2. For the remaining multiples, you have to cast on all 3 knit stitches. Remember, I'm only doing 2 multiples of 9, so I'm just going to show you how to do these 2 braids, but this will show you the transition into the remaining multiples for however wide you want to make your scarf. All right, so beginning on the next available vertical stitch, we cast on 3 knit stitches. So once you have all 3 of your loops, you're going to grab your regular hook, and you're going to cast on 3 knit stitches onto your regular hook. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to loosen up the tension of these stitches, and we're going to be left with just these last 3 stitches here at the end of the row. So we have 2 vertical stitches and then the final stitch of the row, giving us a total of 3 stitches. All right, so I'm going to loosen up the tension on these stitches on the hook, and we're going to pick up our Tunisian hook again and cast on the remaining 3 knit stitches. So here's 1, 2, and then to cast on the final stitch of the row, what I normally do, let me separate these here, I skip this first leg and I insert my hook between that leg and the 2 remaining legs at the end of the row. Once you've cast on your stitches, it should look like this. So you've got your first set of 3, and then your second set of 3, which is on your regular hook, and your last set of 3 right on your Tunisian hook. So we're going to slip these stitches on the regular hook onto the Tunisian hook. So just line up the end of your regular hook with the tip of the Tunisian hook and slip the stitches right onto that Tunisian hook. And there you go. So once you have cast on your row, you have to complete a return pass. Now the return pass is just the regular return pass, but pay attention on this next row because it's very easy for your stitches to stick together. So you're going to begin with your yarn over, pull through 1, and for the remaining stitches of the row, you're just going to yarn over and pull through 2. Do this row a little bit slowly as stitches do tend to get stuck with each other. So complete your return pass and I'll see you again for the next row. All right, once you've completed your return pass, your work is going to look like this. Now I know it looks like a little bit of a mess, but it's really not that bad, so let me show you what to look for. Make sure that you're looking at the Tunisian side and not the return pass side. When you're looking at the vertical stitches, you're going to notice this little clump right here. Now this little cluster is made up of 6 stitches, so you have the first 3 vertical stitches that are back here, they're kind of hidden, and then in front you have 3 vertical stitches. So it's going to be the same in each of these little clumps that you see. So if you're doing the full scarf pattern, you should have 4 of these. I only have 2, remember I'm doing multiples of 2, but you're going to have your 3 sets right here. To begin to cast on this row, for this row and the next row, you are just working knit stitches. You're not crossing anything over, so it's pretty straightforward just to knit stitch into each of the vertical stitches of the row. Beginning on the second vertical stitch, you're going to insert your hook, yarn over, and cast on 1. So I've got my first 3 loops already. I'm at the first cluster, so you're going to work the stitches that are closest to your hook first. So these are the closest to my hook, so I have to cast these knit stitches on first. So if they're a little difficult to see, just kind of work the stitches out a little bit like this with your fingers so you're able to see them easily, and you can cast on a knit stitch into each of them. So this is where it helps to work with a very loose tension so that this part of the stitching becomes a lot easier. Once you've cast on those 3, you go into the next 3 vertical stitches and cast on those, also knit stitches. And there we go. And then you repeat with the remaining stitches of the row. We're just going to speed this bit up so that we get to the next cluster. And when we're at this next cluster, I'll just show this part to you again. Remember to work the back stitches first because they are the ones that are closest to your hook. And then we're going to do these at the end. So here's your final stitch. It might be a little bit difficult to see, but here's the last cluster of 3. There we go. So here's that final stitch. All right, so let's cast on the first 3 vertical stitches. And then the second set of 3. And then that final stitch of the row. And there you go. Once you've cast on all your stitches, you work a regular return pass, so yarn over, pull through 1, and then yarn over, pull through 2 until you're left with just 1 loop on your hook. So here's a look at my work once I've completed the return pass, and as you can see, it's a little bit easier to see the stitching now. So for this next row, which is going to be row number 3, you are going to work a knit stitch into every vertical stitch of the row. Once you have completed this row, remember to complete your return pass, and it is a standard return pass. I'm going to go ahead and complete this, get my return pass ready, and then we'll go on to row number 4. So for row number 4, you're going to need to switch to your regular hook. You are going to cast on 2 knit stitches, so right into the second and third vertical stitch. Remember that you already have the first set of 3 stitches on your hook. Once you have your 3 loops on there, you're going to drop your hook. Remember to loosen up the tension. So drop your hook, grab your Tunisian hook, and you're going to cast on the next 3 knit stitches. So we're going to knit stitch into the first vertical stitch, and then the second, and the third. And once you have your 3 loops on your hook, you're going to grab your regular hook. Now for row number 4, you're going to need to work with your regular hook behind your Tunisian hook. Now this is what's going to fold the 3 stitches behind. So it's going to be the braided part right here at the beginning of the row that's braided behind the braid, or I guess it's crossed behind the braid. I'm not sure how to express it properly, but you're going to need your regular hook behind the Tunisian hook. Then you're going to pull those stitches onto the Tunisian hook. So again, just join the end of the regular hook with the beginning of the Tunisian hook and slip your stitches on. So it's going to look like this. You're going to turn your hook, so twist it so that it's facing in the direction of a cast on, and you're going to cast on the remaining 3 stitches of your first 9 stitch multiple. So it's going to look like this. Now you're going to repeat this in the remaining stitches of the row. So we're going to cast on again using your regular hook. So we're just going to drop our Tunisian hook, cast on into the next vertical stitches using our regular hook. So we're going to knit 3, pull on the tension a little bit just to make sure it's nice and soft, and then we have to pull the regular hook behind the Tunisian hook, like this. Then you're going to let your regular hook just kind of hang on the back here. So let's move this out of the way. You're going to cast on 3 knit stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to pull our regular hook back up, and we're going to move the stitches that are on the regular hook onto the Tunisian hook. So slip those on. And there we go. And we just have to cast on into the remaining stitches of the row. So we've got our 3 stitches right over here. So here are 2 vertical stitches and our final stitch of the row. So we knit stitch into these vertical stitches and cast on into the final stitch of the row, completing our second multiple of 9. Now complete your return pass, and we'll move on to the next row. Once you've completed your return pass, your fabric should look a little bit like this. Now if you look at the beginning of the row, it kind of looks like our stitches are lost, but no, they're actually hiding behind these first vertical stitches right here. So remember that you always have to have your multiples of 9. So these vertical stitches right here, so the highly visible ones, is the first set of 3. So here they are. Your second set of 3 stitches is back here, so it's hidden right behind those first vertical stitches. So here's that second set, and then you have your last set, which are highly visible as well. So we're going to begin on the second vertical stitch of the row, and we're going to cast on a knit stitch, and then again in the third, so that we have 3 loops on our hook. And then you're going to have to move these stitches a little bit just to make these back 3 stitches a little more visible. So there they are. Once you can see them and you can work into them, you're going to knit stitch into each of those vertical stitches. And this last one, here we go. And there's 3. So now we have our 6 loops. And then you're going to cast on into these stitches. So that's the last set of 3 for our first multiple of 9. And there you go. You're going to repeat this in this next group. So beginning with the first stitches, so these right here that are closest to our hook, we're going to cast on these first, then we're going to cast on the ones that are hidden here in the back, which you can't see back here, but you're going to have to use your fingers a little bit just to make them a little more visible. So here's that second set, and then you cast on your final 3 stitches. So beginning on this first stitch that is closest to your hook, we're going to cast on 3 knit stitches. So there's 1, 2, and then 3. And then you're going to cast on into these next 3 stitches. So we have 1, 2, 3, and then you cast on into the final stitches of the row, and then complete a return pass. So the next stitch, the next row is fairly simple. So you complete your return pass, and then you're going to work one more row of knit stitch. So the pattern goes your foundation row, and then you do your front stitches, so it's your front crossover stitches, and then 2 rows of knit stitch, and then your back crossover stitches and 2 rows of knit stitch for a repetition of 6 rows. This is what your fabric will look like once you finish that row number 5, which we just did. You still have to do row number 6, which is just 1 row of knit stitches, and it's return pass. So I would go through, complete this, and then you just repeat this over and over until you get the length that you want for your scarf. Now I'll leave the video running in the background while I just explain to you what's going to happen with the rest of the pattern. So even in the written pattern, there is no specific number of rows. So you can make this scarf as long as you want. The length of my scarf is about 68 inches, and I'll give you those measurements here with centimeters as well in a moment. But you can keep crocheting this until you run out of yarn if you want to. Once you have completed the length that you want, you are going to have to work a return pass though. So for the return pass, we're going to want to make the stitches so that they're wavy, just like they are for the foundation row. So when you're ready for your return pass, you need to end in either a row 2 or a row 4 repeat. So I finished on a row 4, so this is what my stitching looks like. So you want the row where your stitches cross over in order to get that wave. So let me show you here, so that you get that wavy end to match the foundation row of the scarf, and that way both the top and the bottom scarf look the same. So our bind off is going to be worked just as a row of single crochets. So you're going to cast on your knit stitch and then single crochet at close. So you're going to skip the first vertical stitch, work into the second one, and you're going to cast on a knit stitch. Once you have 2 loops on your hook, you're going to close as a single crochet. So you're going to yarn over and pull through both of those loops. So there's your single crochet. So in the written pattern, when you see a single crochet bind off, that's what I'm going to mean. So you're going to knit stitch into the vertical stitch to cast on your loop. When you have 2 loops, you're going to yarn over and pull through 2. So pull through both of those loops. So single crochet into the remaining stitches of the row. Remember that you're going to have some hidden stitches, so whether they're at the beginning or whether they're a back crossover or a front crossover, don't forget to cast on into those stitches. So single crochet into every stitch of the row, make them nice and tight so you don't have too much spacing between the stitches, and then once you complete the row, you're going to end it in chain 1 and you're done. So I'll fast forward through this part just to get to that end of the row and just show you what that will look like once you finish. But here's that bind off. So you're going to chain 1 at the very end. It's going to make a small knot here at the bottom. You're going to cut a long tail end of yarn, pull your hook and your yarn through so that you end up having a loose thread just like this. Then all you need to do is go through and weave in all of your ends. So the measurements for this scarf are approximately 5.5 by 68 inches or 14 by 173 centimeters. How long to make your scarf is optional. You can make it as long as you want. Now a standard scarf is between 58 to 62 inches in length. That's 147 by 157 centimeters. You can make a medium length scarf, which is what this is, which is 68 to 72 inches. That's 173 to about 183 centimeters. I used all of the yarn I had. Now the packet of yarn that I used, which is that KnitPal yarn, comes with 6 skeins. Yes, I say skeins, not skeins. And I was left with just a few inches worth of yarn. That's all I was left with. But if you would like to make it longer because you're using any other yarn, or shorter, that's entirely up to you. Now let's talk a little bit about Cotton to the Core, which is this KnitPal yarn that I used to create the scarf. Now KnitPal contacted me and sent me their yarn so that I could test it out. Now this is a new line of yarn, and like I mentioned earlier in the video, it's the same company that creates these hooks, which are the Tunisian hooks that you see in all of my Tunisian videos actually. I happen to really like them. If you want a set of these, they do come in sets of multiple sizes. I'll leave the link in the description box below. I'll also leave a link for this yarn. Now it is available on Amazon. I think you should be able to get it just about anywhere in the world. If you can't find it somewhere, feel free to contact KnitPal. I'll leave their contact information down in the description box. Now this is not 100% cotton. It is a cotton and acrylic blend, so it is very soft to the touch. It is really nice for garments. It is a little bit fuzzy, as you can see here, so it's going to be nice for any of your winter projects. It is a DK yarn, so it is a medium weight yarn. There is 50 grams or 142 yards per each of these skeins. The packet comes with 6. Now, I'm going to go through and wash the scarf so that you can see what it looks like after you've washed it. You can machine wash it, but you can't dry it, so I'll let you know what it is I do to dry the scarf. But I'll go wash the scarf, weave in all of my ends, and then I'll come back and tell you what ended up happening. So here's my scarf. I've already washed it. I did throw it into the machine. I put it in a delicates bag, and it softened up a lot. It is really soft, and I really like this. It is a lot fuzzier than it was when right before I washed it. I don't know if it would have made a difference if I would have hand washed it instead, but let me show you how fuzzy it is. So I don't know if you can see it there, but if not, I'll pull the other side over here so you can also see that bind off, which I didn't get a chance to show you on the scarf while I was showing you how to crochet it. But here's the bind off and the foundation row. So there they are, nice and wavy. But here you can see all of the fuzziness in the yarn. But if you do end up testing out the yarn, let me know what you think. Now you can find the PDF copy for this pattern available on my website. I'm going to leave a link to it in the description box below. If you'd like to see more of my content, you can always subscribe to the channel, and you can follow me on Instagram. Don't forget that I do have a Tunisian crochet pattern book available on Amazon. You can also purchase that on my shop. All of the links to all of the materials I have used are available in the description box. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to leave your questions or comments down below. I will see you all again in the next tutorial.